Welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is about India's strategic tightrope, its alliances, energy, and more recently, Trump's tariff. India is walking a tightrope in a storm. On one side, United States and the Quad security grouping. On the other side, deep energy and defense links with Russia. Add in France, the Middle East, China, and the northern border, and you've got one of the most complex foreign policy balancing acts in the world. And now President Trump has slapped a 50% tariff on Indian exports, calling out New Delhi's Russian oil purchases. It's a move that could change trade, defense deals, and India's strategic positioning. And we'll see how it ties back to decades of tension with China. But before we get into the topic, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Last week, the White House doubled down on tariffs. President Trump announced a new 25% import duty on top of an existing 25%, bringing the total to 50% for many Indian goods. His rationale: India's continuing imports of Russian oil that Washington argues is helping fund Moscow's war efforts in the Ukraine. The tariff lift covers key export sectors: textiles, pharmaceuticals, machinery and auto parts, and electronic components. India responded strongly, calling the move selective, unfair, and unjustified. Indian officials pointed out other countries, such as China and Turkey, also buy Russian oil, but they're not facing the same penalties. Reports emerged that trade talks between Washington and New Delhi have been paused. The Indian government denies it, but behind the scenes, defense procurement talks have slowed. 50% is a heavy tariff. India's foreign policy doctrine is called multi-alignment, avoiding binding alliances, but engaging deeply with multiple partners. Quad, which is a strategic alliance between the US, Japan, and Australia, focuses on Indo-Pacific security, joint naval drills, cyber cooperation, and supply chain resilience. Frankly, it's a counteraction to China. Its relationship with Russia, historic defense supplier, and since 2022, a top crude oil partner at discounted prices. France, supply of Rafale fighter jets, some submarines, and a partner in space and nuclear projects. The Middle East, relationship with the UAE and Israel, driving infrastructure, investments, ports, and energy projects. This web of relationships keeps India very flexible. But it also means every move in one partnership can have ripple effects in others, as we are now seeing. Energy is the heart of this tariff war. After Western sanctions on Russia in 2022, India became one of the biggest buyers of discounted Russian crude, sometimes at $20 to $30 below global market prices. Indian refiners like Reliance and Indian Oil not only used that oil domestically, but also exported refined products, diesel, jet fuel, some of which ended up in Western markets. Washington sees this as undermining sanctions. New Delhi sees it as smart energy policy, protecting its 1.4 billion people from global price shocks. Now, the new tariffs could cost Indian exporters billion in lost orders, especially in industries that have built their U.S. market share over decades. The tariffs hit while India faces another strategic pressure point, its tense border with China. The two countries fought a war in 1962, and the line of actual control has never been fully settled. In 2014, just months after India Prime Minister Modi took office, Chinese troops crossed into the Chumar sector of Ladakh during President Xi Jinping's state visit. That standoff lasted 3 weeks and involved over 1,000 soldiers. A diplomatic embarrassment and a clear warning. Since then, there's been the Doklam standoff in 2017 and the deadly Galwan Valley clash in 2020. These have pushed India to deepen Quad cooperation, buy high-tech arms from the US and France, and invest in infrastructure in its Himalayan border regions. Now, the 2014 Ladakh standoff was interesting. Satellite images showed Chinese troops camping in disputed territory. Indian forces quickly moved in. For weeks, both sides stood just meters apart in freezing high-altitude conditions. The incident ended without shots fired, but it hardened India's China strategy and reminded policymakers that deterrence requires both military capability and strong alliances. Now we have this Indo-Pacific chessboard, the Quad, India, the US, Japan, and Australia, isn't a military alliance like NATO, but is a critical counterweight to China in the Indo-Pacific. If US-India-China ties sour over tariffs, Beijing may see this as an opportunity to test India on the border, in the Indian Ocean, and through economic competition. Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton has warned, tariff fights risks pushing India back towards Russia, and even closer to China on some issues, undermining years of strategic work. India now faces 3 roads: hold the course, which includes absorbing the tariffs, keep buying Russian oil, and hedge with France and the Gulf. Second, negotiate carve-outs, seek exemptions to protect exports and defense projects. Or third, shift the energy mix, buy more from the Middle East or Africa, pay higher prices, but ease friction with Washington. Every path carries a cost: economic, political, and strategic. If you were Modi and Delhi, what would you do? Should India protect its autonomy at all costs, or make concessions to safeguard trade and defense ties with the US? Just tell us in the comments, and stay tuned as the story continues to develop. Again, like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like these. Peace out.